More highly skilled immigrants are choosing to leave Canada and build their futures elsewhere. What could convince people to stay in this country long term? Daniel Bernhard, CEO of the Institute for Canadian Citizenship, has some answers. Daniel, welcome to our makeshift studio at the Rundown.
Thank you very much. Great to see you.
Now, let's talk about your new report. Your new report identifies two factors that motivate immigrants to stay in Canada. Let's talk about the first one. Optimism about the future. Sounds pretty obvious, but what's the deciding factor? Why is that?
Well, I think first, just a quick word, if we can, about the importance of retention. You know, there's a growing anti-immigrant sentiment in Canada. A lot of people who think that basically every problem in Canada is just an immigration problem, from housing, healthcare, et cetera. But no matter your view on these things, as the number of immigrants is reduced, as the population ages, it becomes even more important to retain the people who are already here and who are established and are contributing to our society. So that's what our report sought to identify. What triggers people to stay. And optimism for the future is actually a really interesting one. So many of the statistics look at how much money people are making, their current condition. What this shows is actually immigrants are very practical. They understand that it takes some time to establish yourself in a new country, in a new society, and they're willing to put in the work. So long as there's a credible hope that that investment will pay off. And so it's not so much how well am I doing today, but how confident am I that my work will pay off tomorrow. And it seems like a very, very powerful factor that determines whether people stay or go.
Now, I should note, it said in your report, 1% increase in optimism boosts the likelihood of staying by 28%.
Yeah.
That seems pretty massive.
It's a huge and powerful lever.
All right, let's talk about the second factor, sense of identity and belonging. Of course, another one that sounds pretty straightforward. This saw an increase, a 1% increase in a sense of belonging, was a 25% likelihood that they would stay.
Yeah, and we've always talked about Canada's welcoming disposition as though it's this nice thing that we do. Okay, we're welcoming, we're open. But what this data actually reveals is that a welcoming disposition is now a core success strategy for Canada. Immigrants are leaving the country at record rates, and the most coveted or prioritized immigrants, the economic, highly skilled immigrants, are actually leaving at much higher rates than everybody else. And so that friendly feeling, that neighborhood barbecue, that time when your kids can play together in the park,
matters.
That's more than just a kind gesture. That's actually now a contribution that each of us can make to ensure that this talent stays in Canada to play for our team instead of leaving to play for an opposing team in an increasingly difficult and fractious world.
You talk about economic immigrants. I'm going to throw another group in there, francophones. These are two categories that the government prioritizes, but are most likely to leave Canada. How come?
Well, there are a number of reasons for this. The francophone case is a little bit different. The government has decided to use the immigration system basically as a mechanism for trying to maintain the balance of bilingualism outside of Quebec. I'm not so sure that that's the best tool for the job, but that's what they're doing. What people are finding is that they arrive in Manitoba, for example, in notionally bilingual communities where they can use government services in French, they can go to the movies in French, but the economy actually in practice works in English, and so they can't find work in French, and that makes it very, very difficult. So they're leaving at 70% higher rates over the long term than immigrants in general. And the highly skilled economic class immigrants are also leaving at very high rates, and we're now starting to see actually they're also leaving faster, so the contribution period is shorter. Anyone who runs a business knows that it's easier, better, more profitable to retain a customer that you have instead of going out and finding a new one. So churn is a real problem for Canada, and it's exactly the same when we talk about talent for the country.
All right, Daniel, so the Institute for Canadian Citizenship found in an earlier report that 1 in 5 immigrants who come to Canada leave within 25 years. However, a third of those people don't even wait that long. They leave within the first 5 years. What are your top recommendations for policymakers to keep immigrants in Canada?
Well, if we look at these reports, the report that we just issued recently, these two factors, future optimism and identity and belonging, let's look at those. So what does future optimism look like? Future optimism looks like the opportunity to requalify in the profession that you had in your country of origin. Maybe not today, but in a reasonable period in the future. Future optimism looks like my kids are well established in the school and are learning and have friends and are happy. Future optimism looks like my neighbors actually care about me being here, and I can see myself being part of this community, if not immediately, then one day. So I think there are a number of reforms on the professional side especially that can help to boost this optimism. And identity and belonging, this one is in some sense actually easier. Our organization operates a program called the Canoe Pass, C-A-N-O-O. If you're a permanent resident within your first 5 years, please download it and enjoy it. It's entirely free, gives you access to over 2,000 culture, nature, and sport experiences across the country. Programs like Canoe help people to integrate, not in a classroom sense, not in some artificial abstract sense, but just practically into everyday life, to sit next to you at a CFL game, to be with you and your kids and their kids at the Science Center, to travel on a train trip, for example, on Via Rail somewhere, to explore national parks and provincial parks. These types of experiences are actually really powerful, and again, it's not just about being nice, it's about making sure that that doctor, that engineer, that scientist, that software developer, that cybersecurity expert, all these people, they're handpicked to address Canada's most pressing needs. And when they leave, the needs that they are brought here to address don't leave with them.
Right.
So if we fail to retain these talented people to play for our team, it's not just the immigrants who lose, having felt like they might have wasted some prime years of their life. It's actually all of us Canadians that lose, with longer wait times in hospitals, with longer wait lists in childcare, with more costly and numerous cybersecurity attacks. This is about us and our collective interest, not about compassion for immigrants, but about Canada's strategy to succeed.
You talked about sort of the sentiment at the moment. Can you give us some hope in that conversation for a lot of people who might be saying, well, there are a lot of immigrants right now, and there seems to be a lot of blame in that direction. But as you mentioned, there are some gaps that need to be filled, and it is essentially what this country has been made of.
I understand people are feeling squeezed. Life is really expensive. Trying to buy or rent a house or an apartment is really expensive. Food is really expensive. And so people are in protection mode. They want to safeguard what they have. And I think that's a natural response. My invitation to people who are worried about immigrants basically coming to eat off their plate is to remember that Canada is hardly full. We are a big, rich, bountiful country. And to the politicians and policymakers, we talk about building houses, but what about building cities? And new industries and a new frontier? Like, we have so much opportunity here that we can harness, and we just need to think, I believe, a little bit beyond the current circumstances. If you believe that your best days are behind you as a country, then it makes sense to try and just safeguard what you have. If you have some optimism for the future, then it makes sense to welcome people to help to contribute to the strength and success and growth and development and advancement of your country, because they want to play on your team and make it stronger.
Daniel, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.